Hi, my name is Danielle Neely, and welcome to the Industry Edge podcast, where we talk with leaders working in and for some of the hardest working industries, such as manufacturing, distribution, construction, home services, and more. This episode is brought to you by K&C Marketing. K&C is a full-service marketing agency that helps B2B industrial companies grow their brand and increase sales. They serve as either a fully outsourced marketing partner or supplement in-house marketing teams. To learn more about K&C's brand development, marketing, and website design services, visit kncmarketingagency.com. Now, today I have with me Greg Richards, the consulting manager of the Kitchen Innovation Awards held annually by the National Restaurant Association show. He has a deep background in the food service equipment development industry, focusing in recent years on new technology for operations improvement, including automation and artificial intelligence. He was the longtime VP of Business Development for Frankie Food Service Systems, a global supplier of the industry's largest restaurant chains, and other roles have included the VP of Education for NAFM, where he helped spearhead the development of the industry's first IoT protocol, and also the editor-in-chief of the Food Service Equipment and Supplies Specialist magazine. And then also, I just have to give a little fun backstory of Greg and myself. So he actually played a really big role in the start of my career because he was actually the person that hired me at Frankie as my first job out of college. Him and my old boss, Holly. Oh my gosh, I'm like getting emotional thinking about this. It's crazy, actually. But you hired me at Frankie back in 2016 along with Holly. And you were an incredible mentor to me during that time. You know, I was only 22 and you showed me a lot of grace and showed me a lot of wisdom during my time there. And it's just super special to have you back on the podcast and I'm just excited to have you on the show. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Danielle. And it's really exciting to see you again. I remember our time in your first job in the industry very well, and I really enjoyed, getting to know you. You were a very young and eager and energetic and creative, very creative, partner to work with at that time. And I still look back at some of the work we did together occasionally, and I realized that, we were lucky to have you. So I'm so glad that, you've moved on to bigger and better things now with your own agency, and excited to be part of your podcast today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. I didn't think I would, I literally like started feeling a well up of tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think I was going to get emotional. Don't know if it's the pregnancy or just the nostalgia, but I felt a lot of emotion there. So thank you. I couldn't agree more. Okay, we're going to dive right in. So you've had an incredible career spanning in the food service innovation, business development. You're also been in media, publishing. So what drew you first into the food service industry? Because that was kind of, the other parts were earlier on in your career. And did you ever imagine that you'd still be in it this long later?
It's a good question because I have been in it for quite a long time now. And it was almost the luck of the draw that got me in. I graduated in the early 80s from the University of Kansas School of Journalism with an emphasis in magazine journalism. And I was focused, right out of school on B2B magazines in particular. And, at the time, there were hundreds of what we call trade publishing, titles. I remember interviewing for such exciting ones as Pork Producers Reference, Modern Salon,
Mhm.
and eventually Office Products Dealer, where I hired on. And I learned all about wholesale distribution and product marketing. And so, in a few years, when I was looking for a bump up, I interviewed well for another dealer type or distribution magazine. And this one was called Food Service Equipment Specialist. And of course, the title of a good industry a trade magazine's title, it explains exactly what what the industry is. So
Yeah.
it was in fact for food service equipment, dealers, sales representatives, as well as manufacturers.
Hmm.
But no, I had no idea that 41 years later I would still be in this industry.
Hmm.
But at the time, I had a great chief editor who had covered food service for many years, and his fascination with it really infected me. So I sort of fell in love with food service.
Hmm.
Um, And I think the reason is that it's kind of an exciting business. It's a form of show business. You're feeding people and you're looking to, keep them coming back to your business through, great service, great food. And it's always evolving because of changing consumer tastes and changing consumer needs.
Mhm.
So I think, it's got incredible variety, and it's a business of strivers. People are always trying to do better and to, of course, be competitive. I
Mhm.
don't think I'd be having as much fun if had taken the job in the pork farming. Pork farming, nothing wrong with pork farming, but I feel very lucky to have fallen into an industry that is just naturally interesting to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's so true that what you say of like when you really think about what food does and like the end product of the restaurant industry and like bringing people together and like creating that experience, it can be so much deeper than what we like think about it as. So I love that.
Exactly. You can feel good about the industry because we really do, we feed people.
Hmm.
And back in, back when I was a kid and growing up, food service was kind of a luxury.
Hmm.
And if you ate out maybe once a month or something, it was kind of a big deal. But today, people need food service as an important component of their lives. You don't necessarily do it purely as a luxury. You may be doing it out of necessity because you're working, you're raising, multiple children, you
Hmm.
know, your lifestyle factors kind of drive your need for food service. So, we're fulfilling a very important need in our industry. But then we're also adding hopefully some joy to people's lives by providing, great experiences. And so whether you're a student at a college or university, or whether you're a working parent, or whether you're somebody my age who's just enjoying out an evening out with a spouse, it's an important we fulfill an important role in our society.
For sure. And that was something that I feel like I didn't really appreciate or understand fully during our time at Frankie until I was out of it is like the importance of the work that not only like front of house, customer experience and like everybody knows your waitress is important and the vibe of the restaurant is important, but also what's happening on the back of the house and the happiness of the chefs, the happiness of the workers that are happening behind there, and the way that they're able to do their jobs, that affects the overall experience as well. And so it's not only just the power on the front of the house, but also the back of the house, which is the area that we know of. So I feel like that's something that's super powerful that people don't really think about.
I do too, and I think especially coming out of COVID when, it was difficult you know, to work food service jobs, it was difficult to attract and retain people in food service jobs. The life of the what I would call the kitchen crew, really became much more of a topic in our industry. And I think employers realized, we've got to find ways to de-stress the kitchen, and we've got to find ways to make the jobs in the kitchen, less complicated, not because people are dumb or unable to figure things out, but just because they're stressed, there's stressors coming at them from all directions. And if you can allow people to just relax and perform better in their jobs, they're going to be happier. And if you have, it's a cliche, but if you've got a happy kitchen staff, you're going to have happier customers. The results of their work is just going to be better. And also, customers pick up on the vibe of a restaurant. They see what's going on in the operation,
Mhm.
and they think, well, if I'm in a place where people enjoy what they're doing and they're glad that I'm here,
Mhm.
that just adds so much more to the experience, right?
Absolutely. You can feel it, especially at those, the fast food, the fast casual, where you're
Yeah,
actually getting a peek into the back. In a fancy
exactly.
restaurant, you might not see it, but when you're going up to a counter, you can feel if somebody is making eye contact with you. You can tell if they've had a bad day. Like those workers and that the energy that comes is all right there for everybody to see. So
Exactly.
absolutely. So the National Restaurant Show, or NRA, as like we like to call it, major event in the world of food service, so everybody knows it there. But for those who aren't familiar with it, tell us a little bit more about that show and your involvement with it with the Kitchen Innovation Awards.
Absolutely. Well, I think this year will be the 40th year that I've been involved in the restaurant show. I used to cover it as a, a trade magazine journalist. And then later on, I was involved in it, both in association work, but then also as a marketer of equipment with companies like Frankie. So it's by far the biggest food service industry trade show. It always has been. It's going to be 95 years old this year. And for the past 60 or so years, it's been held at the big McCormick Place Convention Center, which is right on Lake Michigan in Chicago. And it's a show that's attended by tens of thousands of food service operators. So an operator can be, of course, a restaurateur, but also a director of food and beverage from a hotel, food service manager from a school or a college or a healthcare facility, people in charge of food and beverage for travel facilities like airports, recreation facilities, including stadiums. So, food service is such a broad activity.
Yep.
And this show covers all of it, in spite of the fact that it's called the restaurant show.
Mm-hmm.
And the products are, it's just an incredible mix. It covers basically all the things that those operators need for not only the back of the house or the kitchen, but also the front of the house. So the serving and dining areas. And that incorporates literally hundreds of categories, from the food, of course, to equipment and utensils and tabletop items, which we call smallwares, to uniforms and shoes and POS systems, and it just goes on and on. I'd say the only thing not covered are things that are attached to the building, so like carpet and fixtures. And we also generally don't cover furnishings or things that are more like part of interior design.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very happy to say the beverage side is also well represented, including alcoholic beverages,
Yes.
specialty coffee, and things like that. So it's a fun show for people to attend, just because you get to taste a lot of different new foods and drinks and things. But also you get to kick the tires on a new piece of equipment or a new idea for improving, the operation that you may not have seen before. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's an incredibly diverse show, not only in terms of the kinds of people that are there, but in terms of the stuff
Yeah.
that's that's on display. So it's a little bit of a, I have to say, if you attend a food service show for the first time, it's a bit of a mind blower. It's like, wow, I had no idea there was so much involved in running a food service operation.
Yes, that is definitely what I thought when I was like, there's so much, but it's so cool. There's so many cool things to try and see. And you're right. You don't think about like down to the, smallwares, napkins, like every little piece of it is there. So it's such a crazy experience and it's super
You
cool.
and you got to be part of that for a couple of years there, and I know that we were exhibiting at the restaurant show
Hmm.
with our company at the time, so you got to see it both as an exhibitor, as well as, of course, somebody looking through,
Yeah.
wandering the aisles of the show and getting a full dose of it.
Yeah, for sure. It was quite the experience. Planning, I'm like, there's so much involved. I'm like, people need to understand, like, if you are a goer of trade shows, there is so much involved in putting these productions together for you. And it is truly just a spectacle, especially one like NRA's for sure. Uh,
Yeah. So now I'm proud to be sort of an exhibitor again, in my role as the manager of the Kitchen Innovations Awards. We actually conduct a competition every year, and it's judged by independent food service industry experts, people that are involved in the design and construction of food service facilities, as well as people from major chains, or food service contract operators like Aramark. So every year we get, dozens of entries from people in the industry who make food service equipment and supplies, and they're looking to, compete against the others who are introducing new products And every year we choose anywhere from, I would say, 15 or 20 new technologies.
Hmm.
Um, and they're all displayed in a special pavilion at the restaurant show that's, you know, devoted to the Kitchen Innovation Awards. And so I was very pleased to help manage this year's competition, facilitate the judging of the entries, and then, of course, I'll be at the restaurant show this coming May
Hmm.
in order to, answer questions and help to promote the program, along with the judges who will also be there.
Hmm.
So once again, I'll be I'll be at McCormick Place in May.
There you go. I love that. What are some of the coolest innovations that you've seen in that program over the years? What are some that come to mind? Like if you had to
You
pick
know,
three.
not surprisingly, automation is kind of, really coming to the fore in food service. And some people think, well, if we're going to do robotics or automated equipment, isn't that taking jobs away from people, in the kitchen? But the reality is our industry is really struggling to attract and retain enough people. So even people who work in restaurant kitchens would would tell you, no, this isn't going to steal my job. It's going to help make sure that I have sufficient help in the kitchen to keep this place running more smoothly.
Hmm.
So it's really not about replacing jobs at all. It's about making it easier for the people who do work in kitchens to
Hmm.
do their jobs better, mostly by taking away some of the more menial or repetitive tasks.
Yep.
So yeah, we see robotic fry stations now that are able to automatically, drop fries from a frozen food dispenser into the fryer and then take them out of the fryer when they're done. So instead of all this beeping, going on in the kitchen, you have a machine that's just handling that flow. There are artificial intelligence tools now, like monitoring systems that are looking at food either on a grill or maybe in a fryer, and reminding staff that either the food is done or it's time to discard food that's been sitting for too long, or it's time to make more of a particular item that you're running out of, like at your favorite Mexican chain. They have all those pans of food up front with the beans and the cilantro and the chicken. And if you're able to automatically alert the kitchen crew that you're getting low on rice or you're going to need to cook more chicken, and you can do it in time to prevent a stock out for that food item, everybody's happier, right? The customer isn't disappointed because you're out of something that they want, and the kitchen staff isn't caught, having to run back at the last minute to
Yeah.
grab something. So that's a good use of artificial intelligence. So we see a lot more of that. In fact, about six of this year's winners were in the either mechanical automation or some sort of software or AI solution. So I think that's been the biggest trend, is the use of technology to, simplify and automate.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's incredible. So it's like a visual AI automation tool that is looking at the food and giving them notifications. So is that why it's never empty anymore? Are these things like very normal in like the Chipotles of the world and the all the different what's the other one? Blue Coast, all of the little
Yeah,
fast food.
yeah.
Is that what
That
they're
is
doing?
that is the goal. That is the goal. Now, I will say, Danielle, it's going to take time for operators to adopt this technology.
Hmm.
Any time you introduce a major change to the way that they run, their operation, it requires, first of all, an investment, but it also requires, some mental shift or adoption by them and their crew. So a lot of the things we're seeing are very promising, but they are going to take a number of years to really implement fully.
Hmm.
There is a major hamburger chain that's using a monitor for the grill, and
Hmm.
this particular chain, they cook a lot of meat, and they have a kind of a holding pattern on the grill, but it's easy for a really busy grill operator to lose track of which patties got here first. Uh,
Yeah.
which ones should, first in, first out, which ones should be served first and which ones need to be, discarded or reused for another food item. So it's just a very simple screen that has little green, yellow, and red boxes around each hamburger patty. And the grill operator can glance up and go, "Oh, that one there is the one that I put on the grill first." So
Yeah.
it's just helping the brand improve the quality of its burgers, right?
Mm,
And it's also just de-stressing the job for the grill operator who's he's listening to what's going on in drive-through. He's listening to what they're shouting from the front counter. He's trying to keep track of what he's doing in the back, unpackaging food, throwing out trash. He's looking in five directions at a time.
yep.
And so now he's got a helper that's just saying, hey, you know, this is what
This
you
is
should do.
burning. This is burning.
Yeah, it's not insulting his intelligence. It's
Yeah.
not Big Brother. It's not Big Brother telling him what to do. It's like a helper. It's like, okay, this is I'm helping you keep track here. This is the hamburger you should serve next.
Yep.
So those are the kinds of tools that can make a difference. They can reduce food waste
Hmm.
because it directs him about how much food he should be adding to the grill. And it's also helping him improve quality because it's telling him which food is ready to serve according to that brand's standards. So
That's
yeah,
so
so
cool.
those are the cool things we're looking at, and I think even though adoption of new technology does take time, the food service industry is pretty old-fashioned and pretty. I don't want to say backwards, but very very kind of hidebound in old practices. So it will take time, to see these changes take effect. But it's going to happen. It really has to, just because of the cost of labor, the cost of attracting and training labor,
Hmm.
and the cost of dealing with mistakes is
Hmm.
just getting too high.
Yep.
So it's going to be worth the investment for operators to tackle those problems.
For sure. That's so like when you put it in that perspective, it's like we all have we all have 1,000 tabs in our brain going off at all times.
Exactly.
So it's like that doesn't go away, especially in food service. If anything, it's exemplified. So it's like to have a tool to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on to keep you centered and keep you grounded when you have 1,000 other things going on. That's going to make the difference in how that person feels at the end of the day. Like they're already stressed. So like if we can limit the stress by like implementing some of those tools, like how huge is that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I also feel like I need that because I have 1,000 tabs in my brain when I'm trying to cook dinner for my family and the
Right.
dog is barking and the kid is screaming and all this stuff is going on. I'm like, I think I need that in my house to keep me on track when I'm cooking dinner.
Yeah, and all businesses need it, beyond food service, of course. And so the tools we use for managing, contacts, and the tools we use for managing communication with our business partners and customers, if we didn't have, I mean, I often think now, if I didn't have the tools I use today, like HubSpot, for contact management, um, how did I do it, 6 or 8 years ago?
Right?
How did I keep track of all that stuff? And
Mm-hmm.
granted, I'm getting old, and so my ability to cover detail is not as it used to be. But still, you just think, gosh, we're able to do so much more, and more efficiently now than we could before the introduction of some of the newer AI tools and automation tools. So I'm
Totally.
a
It's
fan.
something as basic as a calendar. I'm like, oh my gosh, if it's not in my Google Calendar or in my Zoom, I'm like, I forgot about it, probably. So it needs to be
Exactly.
somewhere digital for me to remember. I know a lot of people still have their paper schedules, and I write my to-do list every day
Yeah.
still, but I couldn't do it without the help of my handy dandy Google Calendar for sure.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of people are concerned about AI potentially depersonalizing, our interactions, but I kind of think it's the opposite. I think
Mhm.
if I have a tool that's helping me to keep track of who am I talking to next and about what, then I can just focus on what I'm going to say when it's time, and I can focus on producing more meaningful interactions with people, and being more valuable to them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I view these tools as enabling better personalization and better creation of content
Mhm.
that makes your role hopefully more valuable to them.
For sure. Um, Shifting gears a little bit on, you mentioned somebody from your past, excuse me, in your publishing background, that there was somebody who really inspired you at
Yes.
your companies that I was going to ask, who are some of your mentors and people that have guided you in your career that you really appreciate and look back on fondly?
Yeah, he's still in the industry. He's about 10 years older than I am, but he's still involved and he publishes a newsletter and he's kind of a matchmaker in the industry. He helps a lot of people with new ideas figure out, who to get in touch with to help develop this. So his name's Robin Ashton,
Hmm.
and he was publisher of my magazine back in the day, and he was involved in publishing his entire career, and he still is. But he's a spark plug. He's just full of energy and ideas. So he's a real mentor. I've had other people along the way. I think the best thing, Danielle, about working as a young person in new positions and roles is the ability to find a mentor or somebody who can teach you things that you didn't know existed. And so I've been very, very fortunate to have a few bosses, I would say 3 or 4 bosses along the way who I hear them talking to me. One of them is probably Hans Ott, who was the head of food service systems at Franke for, gosh, the first 15 years that I was there. And then his successor, Tom Campion. And both Hans and Tom co-led the business through its growth years. And
Hmm.
they both had incredible knowledge, incredible wisdom about how the industry works and how to work with customers. Tom Campion, in particular, who just retired a few years ago, really was all about the customer, and he really taught us, the value of having a really sole focus on the customer's needs, and you do anything, whatever it takes to understand the customer, to have a seat at the table when the customer is facing its biggest challenges,
Hmm.
and do anything to have a seat at that table and you know to make yourself a reliable partner and
Hmm.
a reliable solutions provider. So Tom's in my head all the time. I think of the things that he would say and how he would say them. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to have had a few people that I think helped shape not only my perspective on the industry, but also just the work ethic and the values that a good business partner brings.
Hmm.
So
That's huge. Thanks for sharing that story. I think that if you can have a voice in your head and it's that person,
yes,
definitely a mentor of yours. If you can hear them talking and saying what they would say over and over, that is absolutely where it's at.
sometimes it worked almost to the negative. I had a boss, it was only a couple of years that he was a serial entrepreneur, and I was working for him at probably his third startup. And the guy had horrible interpersonal skills. He was kind of known in the industry as being a real pain. But he was also incredibly successful. He was a type A personality to the point of being obnoxious. But I still hear some of the things that he would say, and I can. He was a big critic of what in the sales and marketing industry is known as call hesitance, right? It's like, yeah, I know I have to call Danielle, but I'm not sure what I'm going to say. And he'd always ask, it's like, have you called Danielle? No. Yeah, he says the phone is not going to pick itself up. You know, if you don't call her, the natural state of any deal is dead. It's
Mhm.
dead until you kick life back into it. So pick up the phone. I can hear, and yeah, I'm not that kind of an aggressive person, but I do understand my tendency now, everybody's tendency toward call hesitance. And
Mhm.
I hear him in the back of my head. It's like, you know what? Just pick up the phone. So,
Yep.
we all have people like that who even maybe negatively influenced us, but taught us something valuable.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. We say that too. I was like, in our world, like if a client isn't responding to your email, call them. If
Exactly.
you're because so many people have so many emails and text messages and things going on that
Yeah.
if somebody gets a phone call, they're like, oh, this is serious. So
I, I
I
always
totally believe
I
in
always remember him with his New York accent. The natural state of any deal is dead.
that. Love
you
it.
you have to bring it back to life.
I tend to agree. I tend
Yeah.
to agree with him for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up with kind of a fun question. So,
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of gadgets, you've seen a lot of automation and tools and things in your day and in the food service world. What gadget or innovation that you're seeing that you secretly wish that you had in your own kitchen?
Danielle, every year I see something that I want. It's like I would love to bring them all home. What a lot of people don't realize is that true commercial food service equipment just has no place in a home. Now,
Hmm.
we all have sort of professional look refrigerators or dishwashers now, and they stainless steel, but they're actually not really commercial machines because if they were, they would be making an incredible amount of noise, heat, steam, things you do not want in your home kitchen. But if I could have anything, if I could have make a home for it, I would have what's called a combination oven steamer or a combi oven because they are amazing devices that can make just about any food imaginable, and they can make it very quickly because they combine, low pressure steaming as well as, convection heating. And but this of course would be a bear. Even if I had a kitchen big enough for it, it would use an enormous amount of power. It would require a big hood that could extract grease, and so I mean, on the smaller scale, yeah, would I love to have a better butcher block, or would I love to have a nicer set of knives? You bet I would.
Hmm.
And I've been fortunate over the years to collect a few things. You remember, Danielle, you and I worked on an ozone spray bottle for
Hmm.
sanitizing work surfaces. I still have my ozone spray bottle at home and I use it
Me
every
too.
day.
I have mine too.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm always spraying down my cutting boards, and people who come into my kitchen go, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's an ozone spray bottle." It's like, "Oh my God, you're not creating ozone, are you?" And I'm like, "It's actually perfectly safe and perfectly natural."
Yep.
But
You're still having to educate, right? Still having to
yeah,
educate on it for sure. Still have mine
exactly.
as well.
So
And it was ahead of its time as we knew
it
because
was.
now there's tons of stuff out there that are trying to make water into different things that clean
Yes,
without chemicals. So
that's
it was
right.
ahead of its time for sure. So
That's right. Well, I'm proud to say that won a Kitchen Innovations Award years ago, and uh,
mhm.
and I'm still inspired to look for the next new thing that's going to make life in the kitchen a little bit easier.
For sure, for sure. Awesome. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you feel like people should know about with the industry and where it's going, or somebody that's maybe newer into their career and interested in
Well,
having to
I
say?
will say I will say this, that the food service industry is huge. It's about 10% of the economy. And so there's something in it for everybody. And whether you're into, development, engineering, manufacturing, or if you're a people person and want to get involved in sales and marketing, or on the operations side in terms of managing a food service facility and the people side, it's just an incredibly diverse industry. And for the reasons I mentioned earlier, it's kind of an exciting industry to be part of because it's always changing and
Mm,
it's always evolving. And as I said, you can feel good about the fact that you're helping to feed people, you're helping to add some pleasure to their lives as well. So I encourage people to take a look at food service, but you know, look into it a little more deeply. Think about, well, who are the suppliers that make this possible, and what are some of the other companies that make food service tick? And you'll find that it's a big onion with a lot of layers to peel back, and there's lots of room for everybody. Our industry is always looking for good talent and good people. So I'm glad you prompted that remark because I think it is important to sell the industry, so to speak,
mhm,
and as well as the fact that our industry is you know it's a growth industry, even during a recession. Food service usually does pretty well, especially as you might imagine, the fast food brands and the quick service restaurants. you
mhm.
know, McDonald's, always its stock of value always improves during a recession because people are gravitating toward the less expensive options.
Mhm.
So it's a very robust industry. It's relatively, I'm knocking on wood here, relatively recession proof. And it's just a great opportunity for a career. So if
Awesome.
anyone would like more information, they can get in touch with me.
Awesome. That, and I can vouch for it because working at Frankie, I'm like, it's one of those things that when I was younger, I wouldn't have thought that I ended up in food service and food service manufacturing. Like I had just come from being a waitress in college, and,
Yeah.
and then I got back into the food service industry, but it's full of good people, rich opportunities to learn and to grow. So I completely vouch for that there.
Well,
So,
and I bet you would agree that you're still applying some of the lessons you learned, even as a server,
mhm,
about customer service, about, efficiency, about managing your time.
mhm.
Those are skills that you can carry forward, for the rest
Yep.
of your life.
Absolutely. Although every time I do see a wait, I'm like, dang, I'm like, I could not be on my feet hustling like that anymore. I'm like, I can't do it anymore, but I still do look back at my time and be like, there was a lot to learn there was a time and place, and I don't think my feet could hang anymore, quite honestly. So,
Oh yeah, I used to work at McDonald's when I was in high school and in college, and I just remember the many hours on my feet. But also when we were really busy, the time would fly.
mhm.
And whether I
Yeah,
was working the drive-through or working the grill, those were some heady times.
for sure, for
Great
sure.
experience. Yep.
I love
Yep.
that. Awesome. Well, to wrap it all up, we've been talking with Greg Richards, consulting manager of the National Restaurant Association Joe's Kitchen Innovation Awards. Greg, tell us more about where we can learn more about you or the show.
Absolutely. Well, the website for the show is really easy to remember because it's simply nationalrestaurantshow.com.
Mhm.
And that is the main website for the restaurant show where you can learn more about it. And within the main show website, you'll see tabs devoted to some of our programs, like the Kitchen Innovation Awards. Also, if you just Google Kitchen Innovation Awards, you will go straight to it. So yeah, would look forward to anyone who would like to learn more about it. There will be a link to how to learn more about the program on that page.
Awesome. Well, that sounds good. Thanks so much, Greg. This was so amazing chatting with you, and I really appreciate your time.
It's great to see you. I'm looking at you, of course, on Zoom, but great to speak with you again, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. Thank you.